The rain hammered against Marcus Webb's truck windshield as he turned onto the overgrown dirt road leading to his newly purchased farmhouse. His 8-year-old daughter, Lily, sat beside him clutching her stuffed rabbit, her eyes wide with a mixture of excitement and uncertainty. Marcus's hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary, his knuckles white with the pressure of carrying dreams too heavy for one man's shoulders. He'd sunk every penny of his savings, every dollar from selling their cramped apartment furniture, everything he had left after his wife's death 2 years ago, into this property. It was supposed to be their fresh start, their chance to build something beautiful from ruins. But as his truck rattled, over the potholes and his headlights, caught the sagging porch of the abandoned structure ahead, Marcus felt his stomach clench with the familiar fear. What if he'd made another terrible mistake? What if this gamble, like so many before, left them with nothing but shattered hopes and empty pockets? The farmhouse looked worse in person than in the grainy online photos. Peeling paint, broken windows, a roof that dipped in the middle like a sway-backed horse. But it sat on 12 acres of land just outside Nashville, and Marcus had plans. Big plans. He'd spent the last 3 years working double shifts at the hospital as a night janitor, saving obsessively, researching endlessly. This place would become a working farm, a bed and breakfast, a sanctuary where he and Lily could finally stop running from grief and start building a life worth living. That first day, they'd walked through rooms thick with dust and memories of other people's lives. Lily had found an old music box in a bedroom closet, its mechanism frozen but its beauty intact. Marcus had stood in what would become their kitchen, sunlight streaming through a cracked window, and allowed himself to hope. They'd left that evening with measurements, notes, and a timeline. Marcus would spend the next few weeks pulling extra shifts, earning the money needed for initial repairs while contractors assessed the property's bones. 3 weeks later, Marcus returned alone on a Friday afternoon. Lily was at his mother's house, safe and warm, while he planned to spend the weekend doing preliminary work before the contractors arrived Monday. He'd brought supplies, his toolbox, a sleeping bag, and enough determination to move mountains. What he found instead stopped him cold in the gravel driveway. Smoke curled from the farmhouse chimney. Actual smoke, rising lazily into the autumn sky like the house had awakened from a long slumber. Marcus's heart hammered as he approached the porch, his mind racing through possibilities. Squatters, vandals. He'd heard stories about people taking over abandoned properties. But this was his house now. He had the deed in his glove compartment. The front door, which he'd carefully locked with a new padlock, stood slightly ajar. Marcus pushed it open slowly, the hinges creaking their protest. The smell hit him first, completely unexpected. Fresh bread. Someone was baking bread in his abandoned farmhouse. "Hello?" His voice sounded thin, uncertain in the dusty air. Footsteps echoed from what he remembered as the kitchen, and then she appeared. A woman in her 60s, gray hair pulled back in a practical bun, wearing a faded floral dress and an apron dusted with flour. Her face registered shock, then something like resignation, then a strange calm. "You must be the new owner," she said quietly. Not a question, a statement of fact. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, then managed. "I am. I'm Marcus Webb, and you are?" "My name is Dorothy Chen. And before you call the police, please let me explain." She held up her flour-covered hands in a gesture that was part surrender, part plea. "My daughter is upstairs, resting. She's pregnant, due in 6 weeks. We have nowhere else to go." The story spilled out over the next hour. Sitting at a table Dorothy had clearly scrubbed clean, drinking tea from mugs she must have brought with her. Dorothy had lived in this farmhouse for 37 years. She and her late husband had raised 3 children here, had weathered storms and celebrations, had poured their lives into the land. When her husband died 5 years ago, the medical bills had buried her. She'd lost the farm to the bank, then lost it again when the bank sold it to a developer, then watched it pass through 2 more hands before Marcus bought it at auction. Her daughter, Sarah, had recently fled an abusive relationship. 8 months pregnant, terrified, and with nowhere to go, she'd come to her mother. And Dorothy, desperate and out of options, had remembered the old farmhouse key she'd never returned, hidden in a drawer for years. She'd brought Sarah here 2 weeks ago, to the only place that had ever felt like home, hoping to buy enough time to figure out their next move. "I've been cleaning," Dorothy said, her voice cracking slightly. making repairs where I could. I know it doesn't make it right us being here. I know we're trespassing. But Sarah can't be in a shelter right now, not this close to her due date. I just needed a little more time. Marcus sat in stunned silence, his carefully constructed plans crumbling around him. He should call the police. He should assert his rights as the property owner. He should protect his investment, think about Lily, think about their future. But instead, he thought about his wife, how she died in a hospital bed while he held her hand, and felt completely powerless to save her. He thought about the nights he'd cried himself to sleep. Lily curled against his chest, both of them drowning in loss. He thought about what it meant to have nowhere to go. Nothing left, no safety net between you and the fall. Can I meet Sarah? He heard himself ask. Dorothy's eyes widened, tears spilling over before she could stop them. She nodded, unable to speak, and led him upstairs to a bedroom that had been transformed. Clean sheets on the old bed, a small heater running in the corner, clothes folded neatly on a dresser someone had obviously scrubbed and polished. Sarah lay resting, her belly enormous under a handmade quilt. She was younger than Marcus expected, maybe 25, with dark circles under her eyes and a wariness that spoke of hard lessons, learned too early. When she saw Marcus, fear flashed across her face. She struggled to sit up, protective hands moving to her stomach. "Please," she whispered. "Please don't make us leave." "Not yet. Just a few more weeks." Marcus stood in that doorway, this young woman's terror palpable in the air, her mother's quiet dignity breaking his heart, and felt something shift inside him. He'd spent 2 years being angry at the world, at fate, at the cosmic unfairness that had stolen his wife and left him, alone to raise their daughter. He'd been so focused on survival, on building something from nothing, that he'd forgotten what his wife had always said. "We're not just here to survive. We're here to help each other live." "I need to make a phone call," he said finally. The fear in both women's eyes intensified, and Marcus realized they thought he was calling the police. Instead, he called his mother, asked her to keep Lily for the weekend, told her something had come up. Then he called his contractor and pushed back the Monday meeting. Then he went to his truck, grabbed his supplies, and came back inside. "Here's what's going to happen," he told Dorothy and Sarah, who sat huddled together on the edge of the bed like birds waiting for a storm. "You're going to stay here until Sarah has her baby and you're both ready to leave. I'm going to help fix up this place anyway, so you might as well be comfortable while you're here. But I need you to help me understand what needs to be done, Dorothy. You know this house better than anyone. That weekend became 2 weeks, then 3. Marcus and Dorothy worked side by side, repairing windows, patching the roof, bringing the old farmhouse back to life. Sarah helped where she could, and slowly, her wariness transformed into something like hope. Marcus brought Lily to meet them, and his daughter instantly bonded with Sarah. Excited about the coming baby, asking 1,000 questions about pregnancy and birth and motherhood. On a cold November evening, Sarah went into labor. Dorothy delivered her grandson in the same bedroom where Sarah had been born 30 years earlier. Marcus paced downstairs, feeling helpless and necessary all at once, ready to drive them to the hospital if needed, but in the end, nature took its course and baby James arrived healthy and screaming into the world. 3 months later, the farmhouse was transformed. Marcus and Lily lived in the main section, while Dorothy and Sarah occupied a newly renovated wing with baby James. Dorothy helped with Lily after school, while Marcus worked. Sarah found a part-time job remotely, slowly rebuilding her independence. They weren't exactly family, but they weren't exactly not family either. They were something better, something chosen, something built from kindness and second chances. Marcus still thought about that moment sometimes. Standing in his driveway, seeing smoke from the chimney, feeling anger rise in his chest at the injustice of it all. He thought about how easy it would have been to call the authorities, to claim what was legally his, to put his own needs first, and he understood. Now that the real fresh start hadn't been about the property at all, it had been about choosing, in that critical moment, to see 2 desperate women not as obstacles to his plans, but as human beings deserving of dignity, safety, and grace. Sometimes the house we're really meant to build isn't made of wood and nails at all, but of compassion, understanding, and the radical choice to open our doors when the world tells us to lock them tight.